The idea that women were oppressed throughout history is an appalling theory. It's in responsibility that most people find the meaning that sustains them through life. It's not in happiness. It's not in impulsive pleasure. I don't tell people, "You're okay the way that you are." That's not the right story. The right story is, "You're way less than you could be." It is more difficult to rule yourself than to rule a city. Women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Adopt responsibility for your own well-being. Try to put your family together. Try to serve your community. Try to seek for eternal truth. That's the sort of thing that can ground you in your life, enough so that you can withstand the difficulty of life. The truth is something that burns. It burns off dead wood. And people don't like having the dead wood burnt off, often because they're 95% dead wood. No one gets away with anything, ever, so take responsibility for your own life. There's a personality trait known as agreeableness. Agreeable people are compassionate and polite. And agreeable people get paid less than disagreeable people for the same job. Women are more agreeable than men. If you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone for whom you have absolutely no respect. One of the things I've told men over and over and over and over is, if you're being rejected by all the women that you approach, it's not the women. Free speech is not just another value. It's the foundation of Western civilization. It makes sense that a witch lives in a swamp. Men and women aren't the same. And they won't be the same. That doesn't mean that they can't be treated fairly. When you start to realize how much of what you've constructed of yourself is based on deception and lies, that is a horrifying realization. Life is very difficult. One of the most ancient of religious ideas that emerges everywhere, I would say, is that life is essentially suffering. If you learn a martial art, you learn to be dangerous, but simultaneously, you learn to control it. The most propagandistic element of Frozen was the transformation of the prince at the beginning of the story, who was a perfectly good guy, into a villain with no character development whatsoever about 3/4 of the way to the ending. If you don't stand your ground, then all that happens is people push you backwards. Life is tragic. You are tiny and flawed and ignorant and weak, and everything else is huge, complex, and overwhelming. The people who hold that our culture is an oppressive patriarchy, they don't want to admit that the current hierarchy might be predicated on competence. I have something in common with Nazis in that I am opposed to the radical left. And when you oppose the radical left, you end up being a part of a much larger group that includes Nazis in it. I've studied authoritarianism for a very long time, for 40 years, and they're started by people's attempts to control the ideological and linguistic territory. It's very hard to find your own words, and you don't actually exist until you have your own words.